Welcome.
Bonjour.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
You're listening to the Dirty Feet podcast on the No More Radio Network.
Nous sommes vos animateurs,
Et animatrices.
We are your hosts, Allison Burns
JD Papillon.
Et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Listen in.
Écoutez.
We're gonna move you.
This week I'll be speaking with Melissa Tuplin, who's a Calgary, Alberta-based artist and cultural worker. I had the pleasure of meeting Melissa when she was in Montreal taking the Concordia Contemporary Dance program here. She's also studied at the International School of Ballet and the Macdonald Wilson Academy of Dance prior to that, and is now working both as an artist and otherwise in the arts field in Calgary. She is the community investment assistant for the Calgary Arts Development and also a key member of Dancing Monkey Laboratories, which is an artistic collective in Calgary that involves not only herself as a dance artist, but also writers and actors and designers, and they create a lot of interdisciplinary work. So thanks for being here, Melissa.
Thank you. It's nice to see you again.
You as well. I'm very interested in hearing about the scene in Calgary, and I would like to start perhaps with your particular collective, Dancing Monkey, and what your main mandate is. It seems to be very focused on the mixing of different art forms.
It is. I met Mike Chuba, who's the director and playwright for the collective, at Concordia, actually. He was my tutorial assistant for a theater class at Concordia in his last year of the BFA in theater. And we reconnected when he came to Calgary to do his master's in playwriting at the University of Calgary and started to talk about what collaborating might look like. The first piece that we did together was a show called Satellites, which came together initially as a script. So what Mike had done was written a show, which was for 2 actors and 2 dancers, wherein the dancers played counterpart to each of the actors' roles. And we had the good fortune of being able to present that show at the Ignite Festival in Calgary, which is put on by the Sage Theatre Company, which is an emerging artist festival. And we threw together the show in 6 weeks. We had met a composer named Nathaniel Schmidt, who had played incidental music for Mike's thesis work called Sati Cocteau. And he composed this incredible score to the show. And that's what's really interesting about the work that we make together. It's like a movie score. Nate sits in the room with us as we create. We have the script, we have the actors, we have the dancers. And rather than layering each piece of the work on top of each other, we have the acting, and then we have the dancing, and then we have the music. Everything is created simultaneously. So the music is informed and informs the dance. The dance informs and is informed by the theater. And it's a creative foundation that we call the structural triangle. So the idea is you've got the text, you've got the music, and you've got the dance. And at any point, an audience member can shift their focus to one of those pieces and still be able to engage and enter into the work in a really meaningful way without losing anything. So we believe really strongly that audience members engage with art in really different and personal ways. So text, it hits you intellectually, dance hits you physically, music hits you emotionally. And it's really important to us that the work that we create is true and genuine to that. So Satellites was our first big show that we did together, and we had the pleasure of remounting it with the support of the Alberta Foundation for the Arts in 2013 in the Big Secret Theatre in Calgary, with the same crew, the same actors, the same dancers, but just a much more expanded show. And after that, we released Nate's music as an album on iTunes. So the music was recorded in Calgary by a small group of artists who also work for the Philharmonic Orchestra. Calgary is a place of artist collectives. People just pop up and they just love to make work together. So we released the music as an album, and that's been actually quite successful for us.
I see that you've also worked with people like Tristan Dalala, an actor based here in Montreal, as far as I know, and Caitlin Murphy, who works a lot as a dramaturge and a theater artist in her own right. How do you straddle these two cities? It seems like there's a bond here between Calgary and Montreal.
At this point, I think it would be safe to say that the bond is emotional, primarily. Mike is Montrealer, born and raised. His deep roots to the city. He loves the city, as I do. So Dancing Monkey Laboratories was actually created initially by Mike Chuba and Larry Lamont here in Montreal to produce Mike's play I Am I, which has been presented actually multiple times internationally, including in Amsterdam, by a company in Amsterdam. Dancing Monkey also produced a work called Rump at the Fringe Festival here in Montreal a few years ago. So right now we are always looking for ways to bring the work across the country, but I would say at this point we are a primarily Calgary-based organization, particularly as I live in Calgary, and Mike is a sessional instructor at the University of Calgary teaching performance creation to the theater students there. But we're looking for opportunities. We've got shows.
Yes, and as far as I understand as well, like the work that is being produced by Dancing Monkey Laboratories will sometimes focus on the inspiration of one of the artists and kind of the support by the others. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about how you support each other in whatever way is needed?
Yeah, sure. When we first started working together as a collective, the primary lens into the creation was through the text. It was through the script and through the narrative. And within that, we were able to develop opportunities for the choreography to emerge or for the music to be created. At any given time, all three of us, Mike, Nathaniel, and myself, are in the room. We're in the rehearsal studio together, and the work is being created simultaneously. But it is typically driven by one discipline more than the other. So for Satellites, as well as the show that we did in 2013 called Carl Nemeni is Not Dead, I Killed Carl Nemeni. It's a mouthful. Both of those had really emerged as a play within which the dancers were characters. As a choreographer, I really like that way of working. I'm inspired by text. I'm inspired by narrative. I'm inspired by the character work that the actors do. And it allows my choreography to grow in a really natural and honest and emotional way. Initially, I thought, it's just because I'm lazy. It's less stress. But that's not true at all. It's really inspirational for me to work in a space with other artists from other disciplines because their perspectives are so different and unique. When you spend a lot of time working with dancers, it's very single-minded. We all think the same way. And theatrically and from a performance creation perspective, having the opportunity to collaborate interdisciplinary, it means that your lens and your way of viewing the work is constantly shifting. You're constantly looking at the work through a new set of eyes to say, dancers look at lighting and spacing so much different than actors do. Is there a way that we can integrate that with the actors blocking to expand the way that the audience is looking at the stage? Music is composed in a much different way compositionally than choreography is. Is there something that we can take from the way that Nate composes his music or respond to the way that he's composing the music to allow things to kind of bubble up together? Last year, in 2014, we had the opportunity to present a work called We Must Collide at the Fluid Festival in Calgary, which is a festival that is run by Springboard Performance. And this was the first work that was really dance-focused. Again, there was text, there was music, but the primary lens was through the choreography because we were really interested in a collective to see what would happen if the main driver was a movement more than a word. And the work was really well received. We were really excited to be able to bring dancers into the room, to open their voices, to to have them speak, to have them respond to the words, as well as to the music that was hitting them. And that was a really positive experience for me as a choreographer, because it had been the first time that I felt that I had choreographed a full-length work, which, as everybody knows, is extremely daunting. And we had the extra opportunity to perform the work in 3 different venues. So we performed the work in a church, on a stage in the middle of the day. We performed it in a bar on a very, very small stage that's typically for blues musicians. And we also performed it outside at the Springboard Performance Container Art Park in a neighborhood called Sunnyside. And it's literally an art park created of shipping containers. So the shipping containers open up to be a performance space. There's a really wide courtyard that we performed in. And it was so interesting to see how this work, which we'd created in a black box studio, expanded when it hit the open air, and how it really created a sense of community as people walked by and saw the dancing and heard the words being carried away into the wind. So we're interested now in continuing with We Must Collide into a remount, which we're hoping to plan for next year. And we'll sit down and we'll be working a lot harder on considering how the choreography or choreography as a composition technique can inform text work and vice versa.
As far as I understand, you are the only individual with your background in this collective, so you become, by default, like the dance consultant
Yes.
for any project.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there... it's obvious how much you're enjoying working with people of different disciplines. Mm-hmm. Is there ever... do you ever find that you desire to be working with other choreographers or other dance artists in a different way?
I think that at this point, having worked primarily with a collective in my career after leaving university, my compulsion is only towards the collaborative. So at this point, the primary collective is made up of a director, playwright, a composer, and myself, the choreographer. But we are always looking for opportunities to bring other artists into the room. So whether it's the actors we hire, or the dancers we hire, or the designers we choose to work with, or the stage managers, it's a collaborative environment. It's a very open, organic, very loose and casual environment and rehearsal space. And I think the opportunity to bring another choreographer or a more expanded group of dancers into the room with me would be really interesting and really exciting. I've started to feel like I am developing a voice and a trademark and a style as a choreographer that certainly has been informed by the aesthetic that we've developed as a collective at Dancing Monkey. And to bring another choreographer's style and perspective and process into the room would only further the work that we're making. Recently, I made a solo independently, which again I presented at the Ignite Festival in June, and I found it actually very isolating to create the solo. I was interested in what I might do on my own and proud of the work that I created, but it felt very isolating. I didn't want to work on my own. And that was just a really great experience to say the collective is where I want to be as an artist. The studio with a group of people who are creative and intellectual and who want to have conversations about the work, who want to start thinking about art making in a perhaps not revolutionary, but in a slightly different way, is exciting to me. And I think that's what a lot of artists in Calgary are craving right now as well.
So yeah, let's open this up and talk about the Calgary scene and your perspective on it as both a working artist and working for the Calgary Arts Development. My perspective on Calgary as such is that it's a small community, but it's a force of a community. You've got the Ignite Festival that you talked about. There's Calgary Theatre Junction, which is a space as well as a company. You mentioned the Secret Theatre.
The Big Secret Theatre, which is the One Yellow Rabbits theater. And One Yellow Rabbit, of course, they run the High Performance Rodeo in Calgary every January, run by Denise Clark and Blake Brooker and Andy Curtis. And they, of course, are forces to be reckoned with. There's always also the Fluid Festival, which I think I mentioned, and it runs in October every year by Springboard Performance, which is a company started by Nicole Meon in Calgary. And you're right, Allison, it's a small community, and it's exciting because it is growing. And I think that we've always said, oh, Calgary is developing, Calgary is growing, there's something that's going to happen. And I don't think Calgary ever felt that more than when we were the cultural capital in 2012, because it was phenomenal to see how large the community of working artists and how large the community of audiences were in Calgary. I think we have to remember that Calgary itself, while having a very large footprint, is still quite small. The population is, I think, a third of that of Montreal. But the work that's being created and the artists who are working are just as forceful and excited about what's happening there. For dance in particular, I do say that there's always a ways to go. With the Fluid Festival being the only dedicated dance festival that programs multiple artists, it is difficult as an emerging artist right out of school to find a lot of opportunity to present work in a professional way. There's smaller festivals as well. Actually, right now in Calgary is the Alberta Dance Festival, which is run by Dancer Studio West. That festival is fantastic. It's in its 34th year, and it brings in young choreographers and actually gives them the opportunity to have a choreographic residency prior to the performance of their work. So there is a creative, intensive element to it, which is really foundational in Calgary, to have the opportunity to work with outside eyes, to have the space, which, as we all know, is always an issue, to find the space for the work. And the work that's being made by young Calgarian choreographers is really interesting. There's a lot of opportunity for cultural exchange, of course, with Edmonton. There's the Expanse Movement Arts Festival in Edmonton. There's the Next Fest in Edmonton. There's the Fringe Festival. So there's opportunity there as well. But what's really exciting about dancers and young artists in Calgary is how much they hustle. They will make things happen, whether it's through project granting from the Alberta Foundation for the Arts or from Canada Council, self-producing work, crowdfunding campaigns. If an artist wants to make work in Calgary, they make it happen. There's a high number of very small performance groups in Calgary where dancers, they just want to dance. They want to present work. So they find the space and they present the work. And it's really thrilling to see that there are artists who are so dedicated to a community in their hometown that they're willing to put that effort and to do that as well.
You chose to come to Montreal to study at Concordia University to further your dance training, but of course Calgary University has a contemporary dance program as well. Can you speak about maybe the level before emerging artists and what opportunities are available?
Yeah. Yes, the University of Calgary does have a dance program. The University of Calgary has recently combined its performing schools to the School of Performing Arts. So there is a connection between the theater department, the music department, and the dance department, which I think is really indicating movement towards the type of interdisciplinary work that I've gravitated to. And the kind of cultural discussion between varying types of artists. So that program, of course, has been around for many, many years, has produced a lot of very talented dancers. It has a great connection with Decidedly Jazz Danceworks in Calgary. A number of faculty members have danced with Decidedly Jazz Danceworks. It also has a connection with a company called W&M Dance Projects in Calgary, which is run by Polish artists who have come to Calgary and settled down roots and who are faculty members as well. So between that and the exchange with Dancer Studio West, which is run by Davida Monk, and And that has also started a group called the Dance Action Group, which is essentially a mentorship group, which brings in young artists to have mentorship opportunities. They offer an outside eye service, as well as cross-cultural performance work with an urban dance studio in Calgary called Pulse Studios. So overall, I think that there's lots of opportunities as a dancer to develop, to learn, to have conversations and dialogues. What will be interesting this year is the School of Alberta Ballet has actually started a professional program for contemporary dance for grade 10 and 11 students. So it will be exciting to see in its first year what happens to have a dedicated contemporary dance school in Calgary as well, outside of the traditional studio environment.
Wow, so it sounds like there's a lot of like incubator opportunities for supporting work, and people are mostly presenting their own work and self-producing.
Yes, yeah, things are happening. It would be really nice to see, of course, more opportunity for dancers to come together to present work in a festival environment, because self-producing full-length dance work is, of course, very difficult, resource-heavy, intensive. So to start seeing more of those festival opportunities to pop up would be really fantastic. But overall, I think that the energy in Calgary is kind of coming to a heat right now with the work that Theatre Junction has been programming. Calgarians have had the opportunity to witness contemporary dance from across Canada and across the world. And that's not something that we had the opportunity to do even 10 years ago. It was mind-boggling to hear that Marie Chouinard was traveling to Calgary to present the work. And let me tell you, it was revolutionary for a lot of audience members to see that kind of work. So we're lucky now that we are becoming a destination for artists to tour. What also helps is our proximity to the Banff Centre. So having Calgary be very close to the Banff Centre has been really valuable because we're having companies being able to develop partnerships. So right now there's a Hofesh Schechter intensive coming up at the Banff Centre. They'll be presenting work in October during the Fluid Festival. And it's just incredible that that's something that we get to see, because as we all know, there still is that pervasive feeling that Calgary is an oil and cowboys town. And I think that we very much, I'm going to hate myself for saying this, we very much have that cowboy maverick spirit in that we want something to happen, we make it happen, and there's an energy to it, and that's very exciting, both as a working artist and as a member of Calgary Arts Development. It's what we want to see develop in Calgary in terms of the lives that creative Calgarians are living.
I want to talk briefly about audience. You mentioned that it is a smaller city. I know that when I had the pleasure of being in Winnipeg this summer, that I was shocked by the enthusiasm by the public that were just interested in coming out and seeing art and participating. And of course, it's a common complaint here in Montreal is there's not enough people. So what does it look like in Calgary for audience?
I would say that the energy towards attending performance work is shifting. Audience numbers, to be frank, are certainly not what working artists would like to see. It's always a struggle. The large theatre and dance companies are always focusing on increasing their subscriber bases. And the subscriber bases for arts work are certainly of an older generation. So one of the biggest conversations that we're having in Calgary right now is how to introduce younger people to performing arts, how to bring them into the theater, how to make it affordable for them to come to the theater in a way that's not pandering. So, like here in Montreal, what a lot of companies have been doing is offering under 30 subscriber fees, passport fees, things like that, things that are going to make people interested in coming to the work because it's not economically challenging for them. In terms of self-produced work, it's tough. it's tough to sell a show when it's self-produced work, because I think one of the things that also needs to grow in Calgary is the media around arts and culture. This last year, Fast Forward magazine, which was our free arts and culture magazine in Calgary, shut down. And there were a number of journalists who were writing about theater work that would never have otherwise been written about. And it's something that is concerning to artists because marketing is challenging. One of the other challenges that art makers in Calgary are encountering and that we're having conversations about is the fact that Calgary is a city of urban sprawl. So in a city where the downtown core is very, very tiny and the footprint of the city is massive, what we've found is a lot of people who live in suburban areas feel very challenged by the idea of having to return an hour into downtown to come see work. But what's been so interesting as studies have been done, as statistics have been collected, is that there's actually so much more art being done in every single corner of the city than we ever thought was happening. The work isn't just being created in downtown Calgary. It's being created in small community halls, in church basements, on the street. It's very exciting because artists are looking at their audience demographics and thinking, we can do something about that. We can go to them. So theaters are popping up in various quadrants of the city, and people are delighted by it. I think Calgarians want to engage with arts and culture. They want to go out and they want to see something. They want to be part of a community. We see that during the summer, during our festival season. So I think arts groups are being really creative in the ways that they engage their audiences and pull their audiences in. And to say that we can make professional, creative, exciting, challenging work, and it doesn't have to be downtown.
Any last words about the dance scene in Calgary, or your thoughts as a choreographer, dancer yourself?
I would say that Calgary's always been my home. It's an exciting, interesting place to live. It's a beautiful, inviting place to live. And there are a number of arts organizations and artists who I think are making work that is beautiful and that is meaningful. And I'm very honored to be part of that group of artists, and I'm very excited to see what happens as it continues to grow. And I'm very excited for the next steps that Dancing Monkey Laboratories will be able to make together. The next work that we're very excited about is a work called After Us, a Savage God, which is a play about Alfred Jarry, the playwright, who is famous for his character Ubu. And the show, we're hoping, is going to include puppets and video projections. And it's an exciting, interesting kind of next step for us, much more theatrical. So we're looking forward to the future. We're excited about continuing to make work, developing our repertoire, and starting to collaborate a lot more with different artists in Calgary.
Great. And you can find out more information about Dancing Monkey Laboratories at dancingmonkeylab.com. And thank you so much, Melissa, for shedding so much light on the artistic and dance industry in Calgary, Alberta.
Thank you.
The Dirty Feet podcast is produced and hosted by
Produit et animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
We have Mainline Theatre, Montreal Improv Theatre, and Paula Flalo to thank.
Merci pour le soutien.
Vous pouvez visiter notre site web, écouter les derniers épisodes, lire notre blog, nous aimer sur Facebook et nous suivre sur Twitter.
You can visit our website, listen to past episodes, read our blog, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.
Show us some love and help us spread the word.
Montrez-nous un peu d'amour et aidez-nous à passer le mot.